Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to Kernels of Truth, brought to you by Progress Kentucky. Very exciting to have you with us this week. We've got a fantastic show. We are going to be covering some more developments in the Grossberg affair. Again, gross being the operative word there. We've also got Attorney General Colman doing his best broken clock impression. Then we are super excited to be talking with one of Louisville's state representatives, an important immigration leader in our commonwealth, Representative Nima Kulkarni. Really important week to discuss immigration as the federal government debates DHS funding and implementing ICE guardrails from Washington, D.C. So really glad you're here, and thanks so much for joining us. But before we get to the news, I just want to check in. How's everyone doing? Really, how are folks doing? Election security has folks freaking out right now, and I'll admit it's a bit terrifying to see the director of national intelligence supporting an FBI raid of Fulton County ballots from 5 years ago, right after Trump promised prosecutions in his bonkers Davos speech. If you want to get talked down off your "it's all hopeless, he's stealing the elections" ledge, which is not an irrational place to be, but you might want to listen to our previous interview with UK law professor and election law expert Josh Douglas for a bit of a really reasoned, rational take on election security. We're going to put a link to that show in our show notes, so in case you missed it, it really is quite reassuring to a degree about local elections and how they're managed. Obviously, roving gangs of militants murdering citizens in the streets isn't calming anyone's nerves, though it is good to see Dems in D.C. demanding more guardrails before passing any more funding for DHS. My takeaway here is that even with very limited power, massive amounts of outrage and significant protests like the ICE Out for Good movement absolutely matter and are likely the only thing that matters enough to urge action in D.C. Speaking of massive outrage and protests, the date has been set for the next No Kings. That's going to be March 28th. It's a Saturday. Progress Kentucky will be working with the Lexington No Kings Coalition to lead that effort in order to make the biggest protest yet. And to hit the 3.5% rule, which, according to sociologist Erica Chenoweth, 3.5% of a population engages in ongoing and organized resistance. Authoritarian administrations will topple. So 3.5% of Kentucky's population of 4.6 million people is 161,000 people. Not an insignificant task ahead of us, folks. We hit about 30,000 folks back in the October No Kings effort. So we have got our work cut out for us if we're going to hit 161,000 of our Kentuckians joining together to say No Kings. So we are working to turn that outrage into action. For the next 9 months, Progress Kentucky is focused on flipping Kentucky's 6th district. The best way to take Trump's power is to win the House and ideally the Senate back in November. We are looking to make sure that we play a role in that nationwide resistance. We are going to take the 6th district and also support key state house seats that are within that 16 county congressional district. We've got 4 great candidates running in the 6th district. They've all been on the show, but we are looking beyond that primary, working to shift the electorate who will ultimately show up next November. Really, it's a big job. It's going to take volunteers, time, and resources, and we need your help. We had an amazing Flip the 6th campaign volunteer event at the Lexington West 6th Barrel Room on Monday. We had about 40 folks braving icy roads, coming together to write postcards to voters that need engagement, dialogue, and encouragement to show up for next November's election. We're going to be back there Monday, March, I think it's the 5th, whatever the first Monday in March is. We had David Kloiber speaking this week. We had Aaron Petrie joining us in January. Sherilyn Stevenson is booked for March, and then Zach Dembo should be joining us in April. So if you want to hear from all the Democratic candidates running for Kentucky's 6th district, just make sure to come out to our monthly Lexington volunteer nights. You can sign up at progressky.org/Monday. You can find a link in the show notes to do that. Take you to the Mobilize event. We are also organizing a similar effort in Madison County. The really important base of voters for the 6th district. is Madison County. So we're going to be doing an event there this Saturday at Apollo Pizza. That's going to be from, I think, when are we doing that? 1 to 3. And thanks to a fired up supporter, he's buying us pizza. So come on up to Apollo Pizza. We'll do postcards. We'll eat pizza. We'll meet other folks who, in Madison County who care about flipping the 6th district and do some really important work for our democracy right there in Madison County. So I hope you'll join us. One more opportunity we want to flag for you. We are doing in addition to the volunteer nights around the Flip the 6 campaign, we are doing some workshops. So as we know, 3 American citizens have been killed by ICE since New Year's Eve. These murders are part of a broader pattern of unchecked violence, of impunity and abuse carried out by federal immigration enforcement agencies against members of our communities. But our efforts to fight back and resist do not involve taking up arms against these roving militants. A core principle behind all ICE Out for Good events is a commitment to nonviolent action. Join Progress Kentucky and our friend Kit for a workshop to walk through why nonviolence is a critical strategy for effective resistance, and doing that with a historical lens, while the Montgomery bus boycott and the nonviolent actions taken during the civil rights movement are portrayed as kind of spontaneous events, results of folks just being tired. They're actually carefully designed, and the activists were trained before going out to take action. We're offering a workshop in which we dig deeper into the concept of nonviolence, what it is and why it works. The workshop will include information and training about nonviolent direct action, your rights as a protester, and de-escalation in the face of opposition. This training is really a starting session. We'll include a Know Your Rights briefing, which I think will be important for the No Kings effort in March. This is going to be President's Day, February 16th, in Lexington from 6 to 8:30 at the Willow Collective. So again, really great opportunity to join us. We would love to see you out there, and we will put a link in the chat and in the show notes. So that's what we've got going on. It's a lot, but I feel like there's a lot going on that we need to be organizing resistance to and help support greater community, because that's just, that's like central to all the stuff we're doing. Is like why we're doing it is we're doing it for the people we care about, and we're excited to just share that information and community. So thanks again for checking those out, and I hope hope we can see you at some of those events coming up. So now, really excited to be checking in with our co-host, excited to be figuring out who's on their biting list. As you all know, this is how we like to start the show. All kudos to Tyler, that banger of a song. But really want to, I'll go ahead and throw it to my co-host. Very excited to be joined by Dr. Brian Clardy this week. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing great, Aaron. We have survived Snowpocalypse 2026. We hope that there's not going to be a sequel.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what. I'm glad you survived. My kid is still out of school, and we just got the text that it's one more snow day, because of course they can't do NTI because the legislature only gave them 4 days of NTI, which they already burned through. So now it's just snow days and makeup days on the other side of it, I think.
This is true, because I'm playing catch up myself. We were out for a whole week, and I had to start from chapter 2 again earlier this week and go forward. So
remind folks where you were.
Yeah, these are the times that we are. Of course, I'm in my office here at Murray State University, and I have on my biting list, I'm really shooting high tonight, Aaron. The President of the United States. I understand that he's going to be a little bit defensive about the Epstein files, the release of the Epstein files. He's been mentioned thousands of times. These are very serious allegations. People in both parties have called for their release and called for some accountability. But my problem was yesterday in the Oval Office, the president needlessly attacked CNN's Caitlin Collins for asking a legitimate question, something that we all want to know. And his attack was very petty. It was beneath the dignity of his office. It came across as very toxic masculine and misogynistic. And I think that he not only owes her and CNN and the Washington Press Corps a society, he owes this country a society. We know that has had bitter tendencies and petty tendencies before, but to me, yesterday just struck me the wrong way. And I think most Americans and people in journalism feel the same way. He has very thin skin, but we expect differently from our leaders. Yeah. We definitely do. And so the president is on my biting list, and I'm going to be looking out my window to see if ICE is going to come get me for making those remarks, and I certainly hope not. So I'll be looking over my shoulder in the days to come.
Yeah, we doubled our live viewers, probably ICE agents checking in. So I think that was, I heard that, and it was just gross and disgusting, and obviously beneath the dignity of the office. Not that he's had any dignity while he's been in office, but yeah, that was definitely a recent low for sure. All right, so I'm gonna for my biting list, I'm gonna turn to a little more local. I am going to put my friend and yours, Savannah Maddox, on my biting list. So if folks are paying attention to the General Assembly, I hope you are. There's all sorts of stuff happening there. But one of the things that happened is Representative Savannah Maddox from Dry Ridge championed HB 312, which passed the full House last week, allowing 18-year-olds to get concealed carry permits, which I think is a significant step back in public safety. In my eyes, obviously in Kentucky, there's no limit to how extreme our gun laws can be, because that super duper majority, Republican majority in the House, in the General Assembly, it's just their fealty to guns is insane. But the idea that, kids can have concealed carry permits, I think it's just dangerous. And I don't know that why an 18-year-old needs to have a concealed carry permit for a gun, when all it's going to do is increase the likelihood that disagreements are going to be settled with guns instead of any sort of actual words or ways of de-escalating conflict. Guns don't de-escalate conflict. So that's my biting list, Dr. Clardy. And they're just it's a colorful cast there in Frankfurt, and they're doing I think the fact that bill went through so quickly has me pretty nervous about what will happen ultimately.
I was just shaking my head in total disbelief. Is she insane? 18-year-olds with testosterone issues, sensitivity issues, their brains are not fully mature. They can't even drink in this state. And she's going to allow them to have conceal and carry? That is insane. That is scary. We're going to become the Old West in no time. We're going to go from our Kentucky home to Dodge City. And I don't like that. I don't like it one bit.
All right, so we're going to move into news of the week. Always glad to share some important stories coming our way. I think we're going to start news of the week. I think it's yours. I think is the first story.
I believe you're right, and this comes from the Gallery Pass, and the headline reads Daniel back at it again with the gaslighting. It seems as though, and I've heard this story before, that State Representative Daniel Grossberg was expected to face a public hearing over allegations of misconduct involving breaking the state's legislative ethics code. He was supposed to have done that, but it seems as though he chickened out and took a settlement instead of facing the music. And the story reads, in one final act, he silenced his victims, but you can still read their remarks on the record. He silenced them by getting them to come to Frankfurt and then sit and wait, only never to get to speak, as well as immediately gaslighting them. And that's insane. No, he doesn't think that he intimidated a Louisville strip club from his place of power when he kicked them out, and they kicked him out and banned him for life for groping a stripper, which is disgusting. But he acknowledges there may be enough evidence, such as an instance occurred, that he'll pay, get this, $1,000 fee. A $1,000 fee for taking someone else's dignity. And I've, of course, heard different rumors about this guy from time to time. Apparently, he has no respect for women. Apparently, he has no respect for his office or for any semblance of transparency. And I think, Aaron, you're right. The gross in Grossberg really starts to stand out, and this is awful. It's unbecoming of his office. He should resign. He should face the music. He should face his accusers. He should be a man and admit that what he's done, you got to fess up when you mess up. And apparently he's not. And I hope that party leaders are running a huge distance between them and him, that they're running for the gates and leaving him to fend for himself, because he's clearly disgraced himself and disgraced his office, not to mention the people that he's hurt, that he's gaslit and insulted.
Yeah. Yeah, I think he's he's a problematic one. We in fact did have him on the show before any of this stuff broke, but he is just shameless. The fact that he stays in that office despite all the calls for him to resign. But I know that there's a crowded primary for that seat. So I think the likelihood of him remaining in the office for the next session is pretty slight, I would imagine. But the fact that he's just clutching and hanging on is just again kind of gross.
History is never kind to abusers, and history is never kind to predators, and he should keep that in mind.
Yeah, no, for sure. As the national news is sorting through millions of documents right now, for sure.
Exactly.
All right, so I think next story is mine, and it's an interesting one, right? Because this guy came up last week. So if you watched our show, Representative Lindsey Burke took Attorney General Russell Colman to the woodshed on last week's show over his anti-abortion kind of full court press. But we're an equal opportunity. We're equal opportunity here on Kernels of Truth, so we wanted to acknowledge and really celebrate when he's doing the right thing. And this week, I would say he took a really important stand for ratepayers. So this was a really important story because a lot of people are struggling with electric bills right now during the winter. If they've got electric heat, the amount of energy you're using to keep your home warm with these frigid temperatures is significant. So this story comes to us from our friends at the Kentucky Lantern. Republican Attorney General Russell Colman is urging Kentucky's utility regulator to deny Kentucky Power's rate increase request, citing in part an outpouring of backlash in public meetings in eastern Kentucky. So Kentucky Power, which is an investor-owned utility serving 162,000 customers across 20 eastern Kentucky counties, asked the Kentucky Public Service Commission in August for a rate hike that would increase its annual revenues by 14.62%. Kentucky Power President Cynthia Wiseman, in written testimony, said the rate increase was needed because the utility is struggling to get an adequate return on its investments. This utility is a subsidiary of American Electric Power, or AEP. They are based in Columbus, Ohio. And I think, some very telling statements in the record of the process of getting this, this regulated increase. So on February 3rd, they filed a brief that Colman filed a brief that wrote, despite AEP and Kentucky Power's lamentations about not earning enough money, importantly, Kentucky Power does not lose money. Kentucky Power reliably turns a profit for its parent AEP each year, Colman wrote. AEP and Kentucky Power are not hurting, but Kentucky Power's ratepayers are hurting. Colman, in his brief, pointed to meetings held by the Kentucky Public Service Commission to collect public comments on the rate increase, and as evidence that the relationship between Kentucky Power and its ratepayers is broken. A number of Kentuckians spoke to the commission in those meetings opposing the rate increase request as unaffordable. If AEP believes the territory is not sufficient for it to achieve its profit goal, then perhaps it's time to let someone else provide the people of Eastern Kentucky with electric service, Colman wrote. So yeah, mic drop on that one. The question is, what will the PUC do in response to this, right? So the fact that the AG has weighed in very clearly, very strongly in opposition to this, significant rate increase, now it just puts the ball in the PUC's court. But of course, the PUC right now, chaired by former Representative Democratic representative appointed by the governor to that position. I think that at this point, most, if not all, of the commissioners are appointed by Andy Beshear. So I do think that this gives the PUC some cover if the very Republican AG has got their back on this. Then I don't think the governor wants to see AEP jack-up rates, on Eastern Kentucky residents. So let's keep our fingers crossed that this is, the right thing happens here.
I find myself doing the Fred Sanford clutching chest heart attack stumble back, and I'll tell you why. Of course, the Attorney General has taken a stand on this issue. This goes to affordability. This party has been tone deaf to the larger question of affordability. Add to that Thomas Massey having the guts to stand up to the president. Add to that Senator Paul standing up against the president. Are we actually seeing the Republican Party, even though by small dribbles and small streams, we're starting to see them gain a conscience? Is this what we're seeing? If that's the case, I say GOP, please keep it up. You're on a roll now. So
let's not get crazy, right? So there are signs that some of them believe some of the populist stuff that they mostly all said to get into power, right? But then you see like what MAGA does writ large, and it seems to be just about selling Bitcoin for bribes and trying to ignore the Epstein files, right? So it doesn't seem like and of course going after all of his enemies using weaponizing the DOJ. The irony
of suing the BBC and attempting to sue CBS and CNN. I forgot about that.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, and like, how much from the IRS does he want? Like, oh my gosh, yeah. So wow. But I will take these signs as hopeful, and any port in a storm, any ally that is doing the right thing, I'm not going to question. Impugn them further, but I will also call out when I disagree with them. So the fact that Attorney General Colman is a bit of a broken clock, I am more than happy to, I don't know that I'll turn to him for accurate time, but I will celebrate this moment when we're striking the right time. So
I got to give credit where credit's due from time to time.
No, absolutely, absolutely. So now really excited that we're gonna be joined by Representative Nima Kulkarni. This is a really somebody who's, I think, done a lot to lead on really important issues that are, of course, front page right now all across the country, especially happening in Minnesota and Washington, D.C., as they respond to that, just the horror stories that we're all seeing. So really thrilled to be joined by Representative Nima Kulkarni from the Kentucky State House District 40 in Louisville, and also with the new Americans Initiative. So Representative Kulkarni, thank you so much for joining us. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well, Aaron. Good to see you, and good to meet you, Dr. Clardy.
Yeah, so this is an exciting moment. This is an exciting moment. We've got a lot of news happening, and I know that earlier episodes I had Representative Shane Baker on my Biden list for his bills that would make it illegal for naturalized citizens to hold office at the local level and also at the state level. I wanted to just hear your thoughts about those bills, and if you have a status update of kind of what's going on with them right now.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure you saw a lot of the coverage when those bills were filed, and my reaction. What we're talking about are two bills filed by Representative Shane Baker from Somerset, and House Bill 186 would essentially bar individuals from running for local office. So your council members, your county commissioners, school board, things like that, if they were naturalized U.S. citizens or if they were dual citizenship holders. And that means that if you're not born in the United States and hold any other citizenship other than United States citizenship, you would not be able to run for or hold elected office, local elected office. And then House Bill 259 is actually a constitutional amendment, which would bar statewide offices from being held by individuals who are naturalized or dual citizenship holders. Both of those bills are constitutionally not legal. So they're unconstitutional under the 14th Amendment, which specifically says that naturalized citizens or persons born in the United States can hold state, local, and federal office. The only office that's restricted is the president's. And so, you cannot run for president or be elected to the presidency if you were not born in the United States. But there is a specific carve out in Section 1 of the 14th Amendment, which is providing equal protection under the law to individuals who were born or naturalized in the United States from holding these offices, running for these offices. Ironically, in Section 3 of that amendment, it specifically bans individuals for running for office if they were involved in rebellion or insurrection. And that particular provision was brought up most recently in the wake of the January 6th riots. So it's not something that is going to pass. It's not something that's legal. Even if it did pass, it would be immediately challenged and struck down. Both those bills have been assigned to elections and constitutional amendments, that committee, and they have not moved since then.
Yeah. But obviously, if folks missed the coverage, what was your, clearly your legal assessment of the bills are one thing. What's your personal, as a, as someone who is an immigrant who is, was not born in the US, did you like look him in the eye at any point? Have you guys like had an awkward moment at the water cooler? Like, how does this go? Because like, he's saying you should not be in this office.
Yeah. I mean, the irony is that I'm actually the only one that would be impacted by these bills at the moment, because I'm currently the only immigrant, the only naturalized citizen to be holding a state office. And so we do have some local electeds that have been naturalized who would be impacted as well. And it's just something that is, for show. It's performative. It's not legal. It's not constitutional. I think it's Kentucky and then Alabama. We're the only two states pursuing this kind of legislation. And, it's hard not to take personally, but, on the other hand, I know that it's not going anywhere. One person that I'm, very proud of, who was very deeply impacted by this, was my father, who, these bills made him decide to run for office. And he is currently running for a state house seat because, right, these bills are telling him, who has lived in this country for around 40 years, who is a naturalized citizen, who has raised his family here, who has paid taxes as a business owner, and is currently retired, but you're telling him that he's a citizen, but he only has certain rights and not others. And so that really made him angry, did not sit well with him at all. And he decided to take action and step up and run for office because he didn't want to see policies like this even introduced in our state legislature.
Go Dad. That's awesome. So it's not your state house race. So which is it? Is there someone in that seat right now? What's the status?
Yeah, it's District 48.
Okay. All right. Well, we will watch that race closely then. I'm assuming he's going to ask you for some tips. But yeah. So beyond that, I know there's a lot of things that are happening in the legislature. Dr. Clardy, a question for Representative Kulkarni?
Yes, I do. First of all, thank you for being here with us tonight, taking time out of the schedule that you have, the legislature being in session. My question is about the budget, and in particular, the budget insofar as secondary, post-secondary, and elementary education. Could you kind of give us an indication of how that's going, how that's moving on the Hill, and some of the positions you plan to take on that, as well as your other priorities?
Yeah, I mean, generally, yeah. So I, as a full disclosure, I don't serve on the education committee,
Sure.
Either post-secondary or K through 12. So I'm sure, there are other legislators who would know a lot more than me. I will say that there's, insufficient funding. There's always insufficient funding for our public schools. And I think that we need to make sure that they are fully funded. I think that we owe our kids that. There's a couple of different sort of pushes to get pre-K, get that funded and make sure our kids, before they start, don't fall behind, essentially. And so we need to make sure that all of those initiatives are funded, and that those initiatives are sustainable. So I think that is my position on it. I think I'm a proud, product of public schools, and I know that it's one of the biggest employers. It's one of the biggest kind of resources that certainly our rural counties have. So we need to, as a legislature, make sure that we are providing enough support to our public schools by funding them and putting our money where our mouths are.
And I do have somewhat of a follow up, because we're going to be addressing this on this program later on this month. I know that there are bills pending dealing with DEI, and I can't help but think that some of the immigration legislation and the DEI legislation that the Republicans are pushing are kind of sort of linked. And I really don't want to go there, but I have to go there. What is your take on some of this anti-DEI stuff and the linkages, as it were, to anti-immigration policy?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of this is a distraction. I think that we are paid by taxpayers to do a job, and that job is to serve our constituents well, to make sure that we're doing things that help them, that benefit them, and not distract them with these culture war issues that really are not putting food on the table. They're not keeping a roof over people's heads. They're not keeping the lights on. And it's a shame that, every single time we keep getting bills that focus on things that are really serving to distract individuals and get people riled up, and not focus on the fact that we're not doing our jobs by making sure our policies are geared towards and focused on just helping families thrive. DEI, is an acronym. People like to use these acronyms, but the words are diversity, equity, and inclusion. They're not bad words. They are words that mean something. They're words that are the reason I'm probably here. They're allowed a lot of individuals from different backgrounds to attain educational and professional and legislative successes in their life. And I think we need to just understand that not everybody starts off with exactly the same opportunities and exactly the same set of resources, which is why it's important that we have programs that do support equity initiatives and make sure that everybody's included, so that we have the chance to make sure we're not losing individuals that are really talented, that are really smart, that would bring a lot to the table, whatever table that may be, whatever room they're in, the boardroom, the classroom. And I think that is the focus that we should have, is making sure that we're creating structures and systems and pipelines for those individuals, and not trying to restrict those people from being able to do what they can do, right? So we talk a lot about merit and everybody has potential, but then why are you focused on these, specific bills trying to make sure that we divide people, that we're dividing them by their color, by their ethnicity, by their gender? It's not something that is, again, serving to help families. It's just something that is distracting them and dividing us, continuing to divide us, while we, don't fund education, while we don't provide opportunities for every Kentuckian. And that's something that we need to move away from. And I think the more attention we can put on that as a distraction, the better.
I think you're spot on with that. Exactly. I agree with every word.
Awesome. Well, yeah, I think you put that really well. But in addition to being a state representative, you're also the founding director of the New Americans Initiative. Can you share a bit with our audience about that group's work and how your organization is responding to this incredibly tumultuous moment in our nation's immigration and policy history?
Yeah, I mean, I could talk for hours about our immigration system and the history of our immigration system, but in short, it's really been designed to keep certain people out and make sure only certain people immigrate to the United States. For a while that included people, like we didn't want Irish people, we didn't want Polish people, we didn't want Italian people. We only really got individuals immigrating to the US from places like Asia and Africa and South America after the Immigration Act of 1965, which was passed on the heels of the Civil Rights Act. And so I think we just need to, as context, understand that this system itself is not tied to our economic needs. It's not tied to any kind of rational system. It's really just been cobbled together to keep certain people out at different points in our history. That being said, we have a significant, growth because in Kentucky and nationwide because of immigration. Right now, it is the majority of our population growth nationwide and in Kentucky. And by, I believe, in the next 25 years, it's going to be over 80%. That creates a lot of anxiety just because of the shifting demographics and the speed at which that has happened. And I think people get worried. And I think when you have that level of fear and anxiety, it's easy to say, well, this person is taking something that you should have. And so dividing people and dividing groups because you think there's only a certain amount of resources available and someone else is taking your piece of the pie, not realizing that immigration is actually the only reason we continue to be a superpower, the only reason our economy is growing, the only reason our workforce is growing. And we need to recognize that and really focus on policies that attract people to Kentucky, to the United States, including high-skilled workers, high-skilled researchers, whether they're in UK or U of L, but also places like Churchill Downs in our ag industry that rely a lot on immigrant labor. And it doesn't make any sense to keep people out and to demonize them in the way that we're doing. All that is to say, I think that if we're going to avoid policies like we've been talking about, if we're going to avoid the chaos that we're seeing today coming down from the federal government, we need to make sure that immigrant voices are heard at every level of government. And that means making sure that they become citizens, they're put on pathways to citizenship, which is part of what we do. We provide no-cost legal assistance to get individuals their green cards and their citizenship. We also make sure that if you're a naturalized citizen, you get registered to vote. And then we will help educate and engage you to keep you voting through in-language resources that tell you where to vote, how to vote, where is early voting, where's your polling location, because that through line has to be civic engagement. It's not enough just to submit your application to USCIS and then do nothing with that. You get the right to vote and then you don't ever vote. Parties don't historically engage these individuals. And so there are, for instance, thousands of individuals that can vote right now, naturalized citizens who are registered to vote, who are just not engaged enough to vote. And in races where you're talking about a difference of 8 votes, 100 votes, 500 votes, if you have 1,000 people, and again, this is nonpartisan, I'm not even interested in how you vote. I just know that if we have more representation electorally from our foreign-born population, we will have a different perspective and we will see a shift in the way that policies are made in our Commonwealth. And I think that is the long-term goal, is to make sure that representation is achieved, real representation for our foreign-born community. And that is the goal of New Americans Initiative. It's, again, not ideologically driven, it's nonpartisan, but it is advocacy focused and it is engagement focused for our foreign-born population. So I think that is something really that's the only thing that's going to move the needle forward.
It's interesting because I am of the understanding that the people who come in don't need to be given tools to vote, that they in fact are brought in specifically to vote, right? That's like this crazy story that is like the right wing is like obsessed with, like, and Donald Trump, as we saw earlier, and Fulton County, this idea that, like, no, really, they're bringing people in so they can vote, many of them illegally, specifically so that Democrats can win elections. But what you're saying is, well, actually, these folks don't tend to vote in very, very high numbers, even when they're legally able to, and then put aside the ridiculous, made up stories and concerns and fears about people who, shouldn't be allowed to voting. You're just saying that this is a community that actually needs more resources and support to get to the polls, because it's not necessarily their first instinct.
It's not their first instinct, right? And you think about people that are refugees, right, that are displaced, that didn't choose to leave their countries. In fact, their governments persecuted them, or their government attacked them. And so they're not coming here just trusting government generally, right? They're not trusting the process. In America, we still have free and fair elections. And what should be alarming to everybody, you mentioned Fulton County, what should be really alarming to everybody is the fact that our federal government wants to take over state-run elections. And they're going to use immigration and the fraudulent votes that are illegal immigrants are casting, which is non-existent, right? This is not something that happens. Secretaries of state, county clerks, there's all kinds of data. I mean, it is exceedingly rare where a person who is not actually authorized to vote does vote, and most of those are mistakes. And it's just, it's so rare. It's like a fraction of a percent, and it's something that we are using, not we, our government is using to make us feel like we need to doubt the election process. We need to doubt our election officials, our county clerks, our secretaries of state, our poll workers. We need to doubt everything because nothing is real. And when you start having, if you remember the phrase alternative facts, I mean, that was the first Trump administration. At this point, they're actually taking ballots out of counties. And I don't know if you heard on NPR, the Fulton County clerk said, I don't know. I don't know who took them. I don't know where they are. I don't know what they're doing to these ballots. If they're going to magically find those 11,000 ballots to say, well, yeah, the election was stolen. And then saying, oh, well, all of these ballots were cast by illegal immigrants. It is something that is happening right now. The stage is set for our federal government to use immigration and the false claims of immigration, immigrants fraudulently voting to take over state-run elections. And that is a threat to democracy, not just for immigrants. It's now moved past immigrants and immigration enforcement. It is now threatening the core fundamental values of our democracy.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And again, like I did at the top of the show, I'm going to encourage everyone to watch our interview with UK law professor Josh Douglas. He does a really good job of explaining why it's very hard for the feds to do anything to truly influence our elections. But yes, this is like clearly the instincts of the Trump administration are not good government, yay democracy instincts. They're about their own power. They're about trying to, hold on to that power. But we have some guardrails. We have Constitution. The Constitution is quite clear about the role of the executive in elections. It does not have a role in elections. And so, I'm very hopeful that folks like, very well regarded Republicans like our own Michael Adams, I'm not going to vote for him when he runs for governor, but, I'm very happy that he's in the seat he's in right now because I think he can speak with a lot of authority and he's a very rational actor in this space. I think we should see some folks speaking up that are going to be trusted within some of the folks that are also most likely to listen to Trump's ridiculous claims. Not, of course, the international audience in Davos, who was, I think, quite confused when he started talking about the stolen election. But, I think the folks who really do listen to their chief MAGA executive and his lies as gospel, I think they'll have some counterweights and counter narratives that'll be shared. But yes, I thank you for sharing your view on it because this is super informative. I don't know that we get a lot of MAGA watchers, but hopefully we can share that information about who actually is voting and how immigrants do kind of look at the election franchise. But I think thanks so much for the work. Anything we should know about the work of the American Initiative or how we can support us? We put the website up there for sure. But other stuff you guys are doing right now that you want support and
I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to talk about it because again, that what I mentioned before was the sort of long-term goal where we're talking about in census cycles, next 10 years, next 20 years. But since this administration took office last January, the thing that we've done most for the past year and continuing into this year is Know Your Rights presentations, is policy information sessions for organizations, businesses, faith-based institutions who are just trying to figure out what is going on and how do we protect our people. So just a lot of accurate, reliable information that needs to be shared so that people are operating from solid ground and then they can make their plans accordingly. But that's been important. I think we've reached over 2,000 individuals who we've given sort of what are your rights if you encounter ICE, what are your rights if you encounter local law enforcement. what are their rights? What are they actually authorized to do? What are they not authorized to do? And I think everybody needs to be operating from that same set of facts, that same understanding of their rights as citizens, as residents of Kentucky. Because I always say this, the Constitution still exists, and the Constitution protects all of us, regardless of our immigration status. And so I think that's something we're going to continue to be doing to meet the need. I think one of the things that we've been talking about internally and certainly with different groups is establishing sort of hyper-local networks, again, just of information, of resource sharing, understanding who's doing what, who's able to provide what services or information or resources to the community so that we're prepared. We're prepared if anything happens, and maybe we don't ever need to do anything, hopefully, but we are all prepared and we all understand the urgency of the moment, and we're all prepared to stand up in solidarity to meet that moment in Kentucky.
I guess one thing I'd be really interested in is if you're watching the debate around Department of Homeland Security funding, about these concepts of guardrails. I don't know what your community is kind of most concerned about or would make people more at ease. I don't know, because you said there's a fair amount of concern, which I think seems very rational, watching what's happening in Minnesota and other places where they've done these deployments. As you say, thankfully, Kentucky hasn't really seen these kind of wide scale, significant influx of agents. Obviously, ICE is in our communities. They've always been in our communities. There's, some measure, just background, enforcement that's happening, but we have not seen a surge. Hopefully we won't. But you never know when Andy, the governor's going to say something in a national interview that's going to get Trump's attention, and next thing you know, we'll be high on the list, right? It seems like that's kind of the rationale right now. It's like, is there a place that he'd like to make trouble? Not is there a place that needs more enforcement resources, right? So who knows what's going to a shiny object is going to get his attention next.
And it's so sad we're having to have that conversation about the president of the United States and our inclusiveness as a society. This is a sad moment when you really think about that.
No, for sure.
It's a dangerous moment. And honestly, when you think about 10 years ago, the entire budget, right? ICE's budget was about $6 billion, and it's now $85 billion. That's what we're doing. And I just, want to highlight the fact that the reason we're here is a failure of Congress, and it's a failure of Congress across 40 years, across administrations, Democratic and Republican, for not fixing and updating our immigration system, right? A pathway to citizenship. I have never agreed more with Rand Paul in my life than I have since Trump took office. And the last amnesty, the last real actual progress that we made in our immigration system was the Simpson-Mazzoli Act, signed into law by President Reagan in 1986, that provided amnesty, that allowed a generation of immigrants to get their green cards, get their citizenship, live and work fully in the United States. All of our attention has since then been on immigration enforcement. So ICE is now the highest paid federal enforcement agency. Their budget is the biggest. And we have, by contrast, given zero money to our immigration courts, which have a 3.5 million case backlog. So we're not talking about processing cases, getting in front of an immigration judge. We're just talking about arrest, detention, and deportation. And that is why we're seeing the actions we're seeing. I'll just add very quickly, Customs and Border Protection is part of that. So these federal enforcement agencies, and those are the people that have been doing a lot of the shootings that we're talking about. They're Customs and Border Patrol agents. Customs and Border Protection has jurisdiction 100 miles inland. So it's not just our borders. They have jurisdiction 100 miles inland in the United States, and that includes 2 out of 3 Americans living in our country. Wow. And I think we need to understand the scope and the authority that these agents have to conduct enforcement operations, apprehensions, arrests, with very little oversight, with no accountability whatsoever from our federal government. And we need to be very, very vigilant about how this is bleeding over into everybody, regardless of their immigration status.
And they've already been given sanction by the Vice President of the United States that they will not face prosecution. This is indeed tragic.
Well, I don't know what I don't know what authority he has to just say a thing. I don't think, the vice
True.
president doesn't get to just grant absolute immunity, which of course he has walked back
Right.
in subsequent
Right.
press moments. But these guys they're a joke. They don't seem to understand the
Fear
law.
of the other
They don't
is
seem to have any
A
interest
persecution
in
tweet
of
the
doesn't
the
mean
other.
anything. Yeah.
It's persecution of vulnerable people. When I saw that the way that 5-year-old child was treated, I have not been so angry in a news story in a long time. And I applaud you for the work that you're doing for standing up to the most vulnerable people in our society. My hat's off to you. If I had one, I would certainly tip it to you tonight.
Thank you. I appreciate you giving me the chance to talk about it. I appreciate you taking an interest in this. It's going to take all of us to
Absolutely.
help the most vulnerable among us, and we're all going to get through it. I think that the courts, we still have the law. The courts have released that 5-year-old. They are trying to block what they can. We need to put a lot of pressure, not just on our elected officials, but on our judicial system. To make sure that people know exactly how the American people feel. I think we understand and we can clearly see at the majority party can, certainly this administration can, how their approval ratings are underwater because of these actions. It's too much. It's too much for everybody. It's un-American at this point. It's not who we stand for as a country. And I think that recognition has grown over the last year, and certainly due to the escalation and just the shootings that we've seen of unarmed citizens and individuals that are exercising their Second Amendment rights to actually carry a weapon legally. I mean, there's all kinds of weird gray areas that we're entering into, but it is not sitting well with a lot of Americans, a lot of very patriotic Americans. And I hope that people are paying attention in the halls of power, that are paying attention, who have a seat at the table.
Absolutely.
Not to mention our standing in the world has taken a significant hit.
Yeah. Hard to take that clown seriously, but I know that at least a third of our country seems to say whatever he says and take it as gospel. But that gives me some hope for the other 2/3. So, all right, Representative Nima Kulkarni, thank you so much for joining us, for giving your perspective on the General Assembly, the work you're doing with the New Americans Initiative, all very important, and we do appreciate your time and your engagement.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Stay warm.
Of course.
Yes,
All right. So now I think that's it. I think that's the show.
I think that's
appreciate
it.
the time,
Yes.
Dr. Clardy. It's always a pleasure to chat with you. Have a chance to just really get into some of the most important issues of the day and hear from an expert like Representative Nima Kulkarni. So great.
Well, I thank you for that opportunity, Aaron, and also to State Representative Kulkarni for a very interesting program and a very important topic at this tipping point in our history. And so I'm looking forward to coming back next month to talk about even more so germane issue, and that is how we want to see ourselves as a multicultural society. And so we're going to keep up the good work, and we're going to keep our ears to the ground and our feet to the fire, and we're gonna pull through this thing.
Absolutely. Can you close us out, sir?
Absolutely. Progress Kentucky is a nonprofit organization registered with the Kentucky Secretary of State and organized as a 501c4. We are affiliated with the Individual Project and also with the Common Ground Kentucky Action. We are also proud members of the Forward Kentucky Network. Progress Kentucky's goal is to educate, organize, increase voter turnout, and advance a progressive agenda through civic engagement. We will be back next week. We'll be speaking again with writer and gun safety advocate Terry Carter, and of course, updates on Kentucky political news with our own progressive views. Production of episode 240 was done by our Aaron, and he did a great job too. Neil Orshan wrote and performed our theme song. You can find more information and music at natosongs.com. Now, if you miss our weekly live stream or our Facebook or YouTube audio broadcasts and our shows, they are available on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. If you do listen to the pod, please leave us a 5-star review wherever you're listening right now. Thank you for joining us for Kernels of Truth. Good night.